Blessed love and peace. It's late, half past midnight. Sunday. And it's late. Yo, I've been out. I've been out for over 12 hours. What's that? I've traveled 12 hours. All I want is sleep. All I want is sleep. How much have you rested today, Squid? Oh, we getting a response from the streets. I've rested nothing. I've rested nothing. All I want is sleep. All I want is sleep. That's not all I want. I don't want anything, actually, to be honest. I just take it as it comes. All right. What's the point of this joint? What's the point of this joint? I'm watching the video again. To be honest, no. I have traveled out today. Trippy experience, beautiful experience, intense experience, challenging experience, learning experience, growing experience, miraculous experience, beautiful experience, all that. Off script, how about that? that changes the stages. And I don't mean to be flippant. Yo, I know it's stages. I know, and I know, and I know it needs to be that way. But at the same time, it's challenging. And I know when I go off script, um, the Truman Show has to be on the fly. Anyways, and I'm not, whatever. I'm just gonna say what I have to say. As I return, it's half past midnight. I got back probably after midnight. I left. To be honest, I left first at 7 a.m. Came back, did some work, bounced again around noon. So I've been out for 12 hours. And I get back and I'm trying to just decompress a minute before I try and go to sleep. Have something to refresh and then sleep. I still have energy because I've fallen asleep on the way back. But anyways, all right. Here's the joint that I share. As I'm doing this, as I'm decompressing, I'm checking videos that I have yet to view. And then there's a sister, to be honest, her name escapes me at the moment. With all due respect, she's from the UK, mixed heritage, and she has a collab with another sister from the US. And I'll do it this way. In downloading these joints, not all the info is translated. And this sister has had a vlog for a number of years. Actually, before I went to Denmark, I see her vlog, and so it's again another YouTuber. It's nice to see doing content through the years. I think Rain is her name, and I think her first name Victoria Rain. How about that? There we go. So, anyways. Mixed heritage, just get to the point of what I'm sharing. Because seriously, I have energy at the moment just because I just had some apple juice. How about that? And still decompressing. On the way home, passing by a wall, all of a sudden something scurries. I'm looking at the wall that's been there probably for decades. I'm like, that's an interesting wall. I'm not sleepwalking, but I'm tired. I was dozing off on the bus. So I'm glad that I'm able to wake up before my stop arrives. And so the walk back home is a minute, and there's a wall, and I look at the wall, and I'm like, that's an interesting wall. And as I'm looking at the wall, I hear like a scurry at the like 5 meters away from me, at the point where the wall meets the sidewalk, and I pause because I'm like, yo, I know that was something. I'm gonna wait and see what that is. Now there isn't too much like shrubs or whatever on the corner crevice part of it, so I'm like, probably a mouse, but like mice don't make noise as much like that. So I pause. As I'm sat there or stood there, I see there is a skunk right there at the crevice, probably a youngster, and just pause. Wasn't even lifted in that hind kind of like, yo, I'm about to get you. But just, it was like scurry, scurry. It was trippy actually, to be honest, because usually skunks um, curl up. Um, anyway, so when I paused, I'm like, yo, I'm glad I paused, because otherwise I would have most likely been lit up with fragrance. And so I walk a little bit of a distance. I was like, yo, we chilling. Don't start none, won't be none. And we continue on. Sorry. Point for at the moment is this. Here we go already. Rubbing the eyes, straining to concentrate already. See that I do have some energy, but it's not a lot of energy. And there's a lot of fatigue. So, all right. Point. Here it is. I'm watching Sister and talk about mixed race again. Still have some videos to go to catch up with what is previously downloaded. Now, the interesting thing is that I'm not putting a lot of stock into to watching the video, not just because of the kinfolk who are involved, but just like I said before, just hearing a lot of like the same conversation for the past 15, 20 years. And it's that surface level. It has yet to get into the rootedness, and even me talking about it isn't getting to the rootedness. The rootedness is what I shared before. This isn't it. Haha. That shows fatigue, lack of concentration. It's a different notebook. But actually, the ancestors talk about the history, talk about the lineages, talk about the migrations, talk about nature. So that's the depths. That's the rootedness. To like let go of all the BS that kinfolk are talking about in this generation. But what I observe also is that who's the leadership to encourage people to this, to give the information, to have the strength, and to be honest, having a male voice, giving that yo, you can talk about this and you're safe, you're protected, you're secure. I got your back. Talking about this, don't worry about it. We got you. There needs to be that type of comfort collectively. To let go of like all the macroaggressions, microaggressions, passive aggressions, active aggressions, and all that other stuff. Just to like have a healthy affirmational, non-defensive, kind of like responsive. To be yourself, be affirmational, be like, look, this is norm. This is not marginalized, privileged, are just glad to be here kind of experience. This is we legit experience. And now let's explore. What's going on? What's the purpose? What are we here for? How do we raise our game to for the next 7 generations? Not just talking about today and this life, but we got work to do. Let's get it. So that requires foundation and support, but it also involves security. So that's the type of conversation we bring to the table and that we encourage at the table, but we're seeing still too little of that. Now, again, as I was watching the sister in the video a minute ago, to be honest, didn't have much expectation. Again, not just because the sisters did, but just because this is what's observed, and it's a lot of very intellectualized abstraction and kind of just spinning the wheels. But that being said, there is some of that, but at the same time, particularly the sister from the U.S., which I was not, whenever somebody's from the U.S., expectations are like this. But the sister actually gives some actual talk, some real talk, some truth, talking about what the nature is and the problems within this society are. So there's appreciation for that. And the other thing also is that me being an audience, there's less tolerance for that, because the purpose of me viewing is to share and say, okay, who's on this same kind of wavelength, to connect and chop it up, compare notes, and build. That's the mindset. It's not just a matter of like being entertained and like, oh, that's a nice conversation, and then go to the next. It's a matter of like, okay, they're on it. They might be ready for some further reasoning, and additionally, so the challenge with that is that we recognize these days people are less responsive to these types um, of communications, and in addition to that, there seems to be a lot of interference, a lot of intermediaries, and that's one of the challenges, because um, there is the necessity of having um, integrity of communications, to build, to build in the way that we're talking about. One of the challenges also with reaching out to kinfolk is that many kinfolk are less. Many kinfolk find difficulty in doing root work. Root work, meaning let go of citizenship, let go of bank account, let go of the things that are um, anchoring people within self hatred and self affliction. So when we look towards solutions, like as long as kinfolk are holding on to those things, um, the solutions are fleeting. That's still not the point of what I'm sharing, though. Here's the thing: what we observe is that how much, how much of a deep-seated insecurity mixed kinfolk have, to not even fathom, even think, or dare to like perceive oneself as legitimate, as authoritative, as strong, as valuable as a mainstream culture otherwise. And there's just this very strongly indoctrinated psyche of insecurity and inferiority. And again, just even how observing how the discussions are framed, whereby it's very much in that victimization trope, and minority trope, and just thankful to be here trope, that the inferred objectives within the discussion are just to like have that small crumbs at the table, in peace, with a little bit further respect, but not to be kind of like equals at the table, not to be even authorities at the table, not to tell other people of other ethnicities no, no, yes, yes, no. It's just a matter of like get along. It's so infused within the psyche pervasively. Um, this is the thought that occurs to me, and this is what precipitates this recording at this moment. There's a lot of things that I've held off on, just because this is beer, and I'm not trying to consume a lot of beer. So here's the thing that occurs to me. It's actually interesting. Can you not see? I mean, is it not just so obvious in a very brief period? Lightweight in many ways already, but in a very brief period globally around the world, the ethnic majority is mixed heritage. Go somewhere else and play the divide and conquer game in terms of which mixed heritage are we talking about. Go play with yourself if that's the intentionality. The majority ethnic group is mixed heritage globally. That's just so plain logic mathematics, and not just large percentage and all impoverished and um, and marginalized and subjugated mainstream across all classes and castes, mixed heritage globally. That's not saying everybody around the world is mixed. That's not what it's saying. But the mainstream and majority ethnic grouping of the world is mixed. Can you not see this before the next 7 generations? And again, if we're going to be honest about census and what it is to be mixed, it already is this way. In the United States, Brazil, many of the largest, China perhaps to a lesser extent, India, kind of, sort of. I mean, if we're going to just talk about Aryans and Dravidians, and additionally, like when we actually look into the roots of much of the heritage, just the whole Arabian diaspora, Latinos, mixed heritage is the mainstream, and not just in terms of like a demographic, not just in terms of a phenotype. Science is on the decline at this point. Science is high, and it's difficult to see much higher than science at the moment. Science is on the decline. The question is how fast. It's not gonna like completely erode. It's not gonna disappear all the way. It's on the decline. It's difficult to see much conventional phenomena of higher than science at the moment. But my point for that is like the whole DNA trope about people's genetics, and that's not the discussion. The mixed heritage we're talking about is all different types of mixes, but it's a mainstream here. There we go. We got the badges in front of us. So it is all types of mixes of ethnicity, and it's a normalization. And it's not a divide and conquer of what mix are you what. No, white people are not in charge. Black people are not in charge. Chinese people are not in charge. Arab people are not in charge. Jewish people are not in charge. Anybody else? Native people, everybody is native, one way or the other. So it's not the divide and conquer. The whole game is different, evolved. But mixed is the mainstream. Mixed is the norm. And it's authority. And it's not because of blood types. It's not because of colorism. What increases in this norm, what increases an individual's authority, what increases a group's authority is ethics and accountability. The word transparency is like too meaningless, but it's accountability. Living by set ethics and it being known. I guess one of the things about transparency is that everybody's got surveillance, so the whole transparency thing is comparatively meaningless. It's ethics and accountability, and accountability to a number of different constituencies that are autonomous from each other. It's kind of like the streets. It's the world streets. And so if a cat says they live in a certain way, we got a number of different eyes on that cat from a number of different groups of different factions that aren't cooperating with each other. So there's a certain trust in the cat if they live that way and are trusted to live that way. And if they're found not living that way, all the different factions in their own different ways have get back, because the street's like, yo, we found that, da 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 da. So that's the worldwide. It's the world streets. And it takes a comprehensive, legit discipline across the board for that type of authority at the world table. And mixed heritage, all the different mixes, is increasingly inclined and increasingly trusted. It doesn't have to be mixed, but it is increasingly the further motivated and further enduring. Now, in that same experience, there are homogenous groups: pure white, pure African, pure Chinese, pure Arab, and additionally, all the lineage, the stocks, the monarchies, and additionally continue intact. But the propensity of hegemony, the propensity of imperialism, is based on ethnicity, based on these notions of purity. It's increasingly not even implausible. It's not a thing. What people observe with the cyber joint. I'm getting a lot of static at 1 a.m. on a Sunday night. People already observe, people already experience the consequence of intolerance. And in that consequence of intolerance, people are naturally oriented to people's own respective habitat, their own lane. And when kinfolk are regulated to their own lane, the endeavor of imperialism is much further implausible. The endeavor of imperialism requires purveying over multiple lanes, and that's not done through plutocracy. It's not done through satellite remote control. It requires presence and proximity. And to maintain that presence and proximity over multitudes of habitats around the world, hot, cold, high, low, wet, dry, it requires a functionality, a compatibility, a discipline to live in each of these conditions according to those conditions, not to try to control and change those conditions, but to respect and live in harmony with those conditions and adapt, have flexibility, modesty, and further. It's not easy. Kinfolk who have mixed heritage painfully, particularly through generations, and learn to accommodate, learn to quell ego and ambitions just to get by, as kinfolk say. Big up. That's the norm. That's the mainstream of global society. And the predominant ethnic grouping within that norm and within that mainstream is mixed heritage. And it's not a matter of ruling. As I've already said before, God is the ruler of heaven and earth. The devil is the ruler of earth. It is the role of the prophet to teach the rule of heaven within earth. So anybody who's endeavoring to control the systems, control the institutions, control the world, control the people, that endeavor to control others is the devil. So what I'm sharing, there's convention, there's empire, the devil's in everybody. Everybody's a devil and everybody's a child of God. Everyone is wrestling with that duality. So what I'm communicating is not an advocacy or a prophecy or a wish for mixed heritage imperialism over all types of groups. That's not what is wanted. I try to abstain from even thinking about imperialism at all, to be honest. There's a recognition that there's subjugation. It's part of life that's continuing, and it's evolving. There's ebbs and flows, there's backs and forths, just like the tides. Amidst the tides, there's also this increasing phenomenon of mixed heritage. So, all right, anyways, the point actually here was just to show that at this moment, it seems to be so pervasive of mixed heritage people just being intrinsically dealing with this very severe inferiority complex and insecurity to even think about being the norm, to even think about being the authority, to speak and tell what's what to other communities. There's always this tiptoeing of not trying to offend and just trying to appease and be accepted without recognizing, yo, hold up, we are giants. We have legitimacy. We have these gifts. We can't. It's not even a matter of like stand up for yourself. Don't tiptoe around. It's like, no, you have to stand up. Get off your tippies, and feel the ground beneath your feet, partner. You have a responsibility because in all that humbleness and all that timidity, meekness, you've learned things. You've retained treasures, and the world needs that. So you don't have the luxury of being insecure. You have a responsibility to share. And that's what I'm speaking to. And it's when seeing the world, just plain logic, see the progressions, seeing the world as a global society that is predominantly mixed heritage at this moment, and particularly within the next few generations, and not just seeing like a demographic of, again, on a census report saying, oh yeah, mixed heritage 58%, 78%, whatever. 78 might be somewhat high, but it's not just a number, demographic numbers. Means like, no, wait, that whole nation is governed by mixed heritage people. Companies, institutions, cultures, and additionally are shared with a mixed heritage authority. That might sound blasphemous to some. That might sound fascist for some. That would be, is it? The pus. No, I'm not going to do a reverse race thing. That would be the smoke calling the ash gray. And all those accusations are coming from platforms of those atrocities. So, anyways, and this is not a hidden or like feigned kind of advocacy for mixed heritage supremacy. It's observing the patterns and recognizing the responsibility. The Cordia Vesta describes how the benevolent mind, to those who accept a spiritual path and who claim to be a righteous person, that peace of mind, that independence of thought is attained through accepting the authority of all other beings. That's the weight that exists within this discipline. It's not a matter of, like I said, it's not a matter of just obeying anything anybody else says, but it's a matter of when somebody has a need, when somebody has something legitimate, to acknowledge it, to honor that, to respect that, to abide by that, um, across the board, regardless of who it is. And that's a very, very difficult thing. But that's the nature of the sovereign mindset. To see that, the righteous sovereign mindset. So, anyways, that's one thought that occurs, is just like seeing the insecurity and the inferiority complex at the same moment, like seeing the mainstream of society governed with the authority of mixed heritage. In that conversation about black and mixed heritage, who can claim black and who da 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 da. Let's adjust like the parameters of that reasoning somewhat, rather than doing all this gatekeeping and advocacy work and everything. How about this? We talk about this. Let's recognize, again, just plain simple facts and plain simple logic. Let's recognize this. First of all, side note, all the whole talk about blacks and da 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 da, it's crabs in a barrel logic. It's just pulling people down to be within the fold. And actually, another side note. Here we go. Another side note. In America, the whole notion of white and black, the whole race politics, the race society, and additionally, what we observe is that white people have been conditioned to self-value, to value oneself on two basic things, two predominant things. And this is somewhat of a recent joint, so it's still like available and inviting of reasoning. But white Americans have been thoroughly conditioned for generations to value oneself by two basic things. And black people, so-called black people, have been conditioned for so many years, for so many generations, to value self, to value oneself on two basic things. For black people, those two things are, particularly for men, masculinity, in fact, physical prowess, hubris with that as well. That's where cats get caught up. And then the second point is victim, how much one suffers, and that suffering being perceived as trueness, genuineness, authenticness. I haven't sold out. Look, I'm still suffering. Look, you ain't suffering as much as I'm suffering. That means I'm truer. And that's a slave mentality too, because suffering in and of itself is not truth. It's what we do with the suffering. But those are the two things that kinfolk have been conditioned to value self on: masculinity, prowess, whether it's in the field, whether it's in the bed, or otherwise, in the streets, and then suffering. Who's the lowest? Who's got it the roughest? And additionally, white people, so-called white people, white Americans, have been thoroughly conditioned to self-value for two things. One, technology, advanced technology. Who's got the latest, greatest technological gadget? And then second is money accumulation, capital, those two things. And so in that process of how black people are valued and taught to self-value, to value oneself, Africanness, one's ancestors, one's language, one's belief system, and additionally, is stiff-armed, put to the side. Lack of knowledge of self, and instead just valuing oneself because of physical prowess, professional athletes, again, picking cotton in the field as much as possible, running up through as many women as possible, and da 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 da. Masculinity, value one. And the second one is how much one suffers. I ain't sell out. I ain't no sellout. Look at me. I ain't snitched. Look at me. Snitching and suffering isn't necessarily the exact same kind of thing, but um, suffering, that's the same. So when somebody pretends to be black or feigns to be black or whatever, they ain't suffered like I suffer. Blah, blah, blah. We'll get into that. Now, for white people, again, same thing. White people have been deterred and stiff-armed about white people's Europeanness, language, relationship with ancestors, beliefs, and additionally, and instead stack up money and have the latest technology, be able to talk about the latest technology and share the latest technology, science. Not worrying about ancestors additionally, and similarly be enslaved by those things as well. So, and then pitting each other against each other because it's always easy, divide and conquer. Solution in this respect is knowledge of self, oneself, respect for others, knowledge of others, and finding the ways of cooperating with each other in a genuine way and an enduring way, in a disciplined way with shared discipline, so that there's greater trust and again accountability. The priority is again the home front, securing a home front, getting a campus, getting a building, getting a house, a safe house where people are able to live, sleep, and be comforted, be protected, be secure, to have greater peace of mind to think about next steps and further. So that's foundation. And what we recognize is like how serious the property game is within the United States, how exclusive it is, to get Title I to a house and then further to a building, a retail building or otherwise. Even when Cats is making a lot of money through different businesses and additionally, by and large, still paying rent. So that regardless how big the business is, whatever is housing that business is the title of those for that land and those facilities is held by someone else. And even Cats who is multimillionaires and this and the other have yet to secure enough financial prowess to be able to purchase land and facilities. Because even when a business is very successful and making like lots of cash flow, whatever, in a way that keeps it in tune with like the legal protocols of society, so that it has those protections of law, policing, and additionally accordingly, when people are doing those things, quote unquote, by the books, one, the margins are very small compared to just streets and takeovers and off the books. The margins are smaller. And so even when it's like huge and even a windfall, by and large, still the company doesn't have enough, doesn't earn enough to be able to purchase the land and the facilities that the company is utilizing to make the money. And if it were to like invest that land, invest that money, the income into purchasing land and purchasing facilities, that would significantly reduce its ability just to maintain the basic costs of operations accordingly. So instead, pay rent by the year or otherwise. And maybe eventually, if it's one of the rather infrequent occurrences, it makes enough money to be able to eventually purchase land and construct facilities accordingly. But that's very infrequent. So point is that the property game is just so like such a stranglehold, and at the same time, that's exactly what precipitated the Revolutionary War. It's disenfranchisement, and so the nature of the colonial apartheid is different than it is when Britain and America were doing the dance. At the moment, it's like a plutocratic domestic kind of situation. But just in this municipality, Cleveland Heights, it can be readily expected without doing all the research and everything else like that. But it can be readily expected that the vast amount of land, the vast amount of facilities, the vast amount of retail spaces, the vast number of apartment buildings, the vast amount of however many factories there are here, but just all the big buildings here that are housing businesses, that are housing people, particularly the apartment buildings. The vast many of these are owned. The title holders live outside of the city of Cleveland Heights and don't care too much about the culture, the well-being, or otherwise. Just as long as people are paying the rent, keeping that steady, and that shows itself increasingly. So it's a disenfranchisement, taxation without representation, something along those lines. So one thing, I was speaking about the black and mixed race. One way of adjusting the framework of the conversation is, instead of just plain and simple logic, very easy, recognize. When we're talking about mixed race in this concept, we're talking about people who are mixed race with African ancestry. To recognize that there is a sameness between black people and mixed people of African ancestry who have additional ancestry as well. To recognize there's a sameness. We come from the same narrative, the same experience. Obviously, there are a lot of different types of mixed heritage black people. There are a lot of different types of Africans. But those who go through the Middle Passage, whose ancestors are enslaved, in addition, there is a same history. So that's one thing. Now, at the same time, there are differences between being black and being mixed race. Both of those statements are true. Both of those are facts. Now, recognizing that, whether that constitutes being the same collective or different collectives, that's another conversation. And in the meanwhile, the consideration is to find the shared priorities amongst so-called black people and amongst mixed people. What do kinfolk perceive as the shared priorities to build on, and what are the actionable objectives that the black community and the mixed community can work together to achieve in this day, on this earth, by any means necessary. That almost sounds like a gunshot, but it still sounds like fireworks. A little too close and a little too soft to be a gunshot. I'm not trying to call it out, but cats is popping off with their independent slavery. I don't mean to be flippant or disrespectful for that, but that's what it is. Citizenship is voluntary slavery. It's not voluntary slavery. It's volitional slavery, enslavement. That's what it is. Like legit. And it's particularly increasingly enslavement when there is not a premise of piety. Like if all parties just agree to be cutthroat and to be like just a democratic cutthroat society, it's still democratic, but the consequences of elections and campaigns is much further drastic. So that's increasingly the conditions for the United States. We have to be mindful of utilizing the term cutthroat. However, there is applicability within the statement that I just made. Starting to fall asleep again. Still things to say. So I mentioned black community and mixed community finding common ground, shared priorities. So rather than just talking about gatekeeping, who's this, who's that, just recognize we are same. Respect that. If you respect yours, you have to respect ours. Plain and simple. We respect yours. You have to respect ours. because ours is yours. So we're same. At the same time, we're different. We have different kinfolk. We have different customs. So there's that. And amidst the sameness and amidst the difference, what are our shared priorities that we can work together on and focus our energy, focus our concentration, focus our intelligence, focus our intellectual rhetoric on those shared priorities and those tangible objectives. There are too many to do not to do it. So, as I'm walking through many different hoods today, many different hoods, and experience that notion of being an outsider, like these cats don't know me too tough from rip, to be just walking on any type of place. What we experience in these walks today is how vicious life is at the moment, how vicious society is, how much people are bodies that are attached to devices, and like living off cues and additionally from those devices. Just like it's like watching cyborgs being born. I have said blessing for this actually already. It's like cyborgs being born, gradually, like a society of cyborgs. And it's painful because we see the pain in this process. People increasingly relinquishing selfness, relinquishing a sense of self, an experience of self, in order to get a job, in order to get inclusion, in order to get approval, and the economic benefits and political benefits that come from that inclusion and approval. So it's a matter of staying concentrated through a device, and not rocking the boat, just doing what the device shows. Meanwhile, there are additional kinfolk who live in an additional way, without devices, or with little utilization of, very infrequent, modest utilization of devices. And so when I'm walking through the different hoods today and thinking, like, how soon is it going to be until I get approached directly? So, friend, what are you doing here? What brings you to these parts? Where are you from? Do you know anybody here? Those are legit questions. And particularly when I'm looking like this, many kinfolk might just have an innate, immediate hostility towards myself when endeavoring to ask those questions. The conditions are getting to a point at this moment where I can look like this. I can look very African to a very Eurocentric, homogenous kinfolk who's not accustomed and is not interested in interacting with much of anybody else aside from that. And in those conditions where I am walking in a foreign place and addressed by kinfolk, very simply saying, brethren, do you not see where things are today? I'm not a body snatcher. I'm one of the pious. Let go of the hostilities based upon appearances and recognize there are people who look just like you who are eating up people just like you. No cap. Cannibalism, pedophilia. So you can try to vilify and find all different ways of reasons for hating myself and vilifying myself. And in the meanwhile, you're taking your eyes off the kinfolk who have your children. And you know this. Wake up. I'm not trying to convert kinfolk to be other than one's own ethnicity and heritage. We promote that. But right at this moment, like, that people are utilizing that as game to get into the graces of kinfolk and wrecking shop. So it behooves kinfolk to get beyond those antiquated methodologies of identifying us versus them. So we in it together. I'm not out to get your children. I'm not out to take your wife. I'm not out to take your money. Yes, I'm here to sing and talk in Amharic and Twi and Igbo and further. You may not like that. You may perceive Valhalla doesn't like that. You would be wrong. However, it's understandable. You don't have to like it. We're not asking you to like it. We're not asking you to join into it. What we're humbly advising you is that regardless and exactly because of where we are from, we share a disciplined livity, a disciplined way of life. And that disciplined wave of life, that disciplined wave of life and way of life benefits you. And stopping us whilst we're walking, and additionally, is to your detriment because it precludes us from doing our work and providing the service that we provide in this universe. So when you are able to see the greatest threats and harms to your well-being, the well-being of your family, the well-being of your children, and to the well-being of your elders and the vulnerable within your family. When you're able to see what those threats and what those harms are, you worry much less about people's skin color, and you worry much further about just connecting with people who are genuine and honest, and supporting the kinfolk to be genuine and honest, recognizing that you need the kinfolk to get back home. So anyways, that's part of what is shared from today. The spiel. So when we are out, we observe that the conditions are tenacious. There's a lot of predatoriness. There's a lot of people running a lot of different types of game. And it's very difficult because people we just observe the viciousness to the point where and it's a lot of passive aggressive viciousness. It's a lot of, basically, to be honest, it's like predatory feeding off like congenial energy. By that I mean this. It's predatory energy. And it's like searching for benevolent energy in the physical realm. And in finding benevolent energy, working to extract, to usurp that, like mining, usurp that congenial energy, that positive energy. Seeing somebody from a similar um, neighborhood or class or whatever else, and just I'm falling asleep as I'm saying this. So, and this is important to recognize, but it's important to be articulate and accurate in articulating this. Energy, predatory energy, and piety energy, like a kindness, a compassion, and honesty, and modesty. That type of piety energy, very valuable. It helps concentration. It helps cooperation. It helps, just like when a celebrity goes to a club, people want to go to that club because the celebrity's there. And the club promoter says, yo, we got so-and-so coming to the club. That is a very feigned example or rendering of the positive energy that I'm talking about. But what we recognize is that predators observe positive energy and prey upon positive energy. And it seems like they're like, one scenario, one type is that people are slaves to the cybersphere. And in being slaves, that means it's not just a matter of like droning out. It means that people being isolated in this life through pursuing a job or whatever, moving to another city, settling in and relying upon a job, relying upon a paycheck, and additionally, so that that person's relationships with family, friends, and further is predominantly uh, the when the person is isolated physically in that career path, making the concessions in order for the sake of having ascending through the ranks. When a person makes those decisions and is increasingly isolated physically and further, that person is increasingly reliant upon technology to have those relationships. And so that's where the person is enslaved to the cybersphere. And the cybersphere feeds off the positive energy of beings, particularly people. So the cybersphere threatens and causes dissonance within people's communication with dear loved ones that are living elsewhere. And there's this quid pro quo where the cybersphere solicits people to go out and recruit some positive energy and feed off that positive energy and pass some of that over to the cybersphere, to the technology, in order to maintain further effective communication with one's own loved ones. So it's a tenacious thing. But an example of that is when people are just talking on their phone, putting all their business out there and everything else like that. Don't care. When somebody talks loud, they're drawing people into their realm, into their world, and literally dictating what the conditions are in that world. And so it's a mental thing. And if people are in a confined circumstance, they don't have much else to do. It's like easy hunting. It's easy hunting of that positive energy. So the person on the phone, it could be an actual talking to an actual person. It could be just a person faking the funk and just pretending to be on the phone. But either way, what the person is doing is observing, oh, that looks like positive energy there. That looks like positive energy over there. Let's see how much we can run game and feed off some of that positive energy. And let's see how much that ups our balance with the cybersphere so that we can continue to communicate with our kinfolk who live in other places. So people are like feeding the cybersphere through preying on the positive energy of others. And again, like I said, one way that it looks like is talking on the phone and drawing one into the conversation, and after a while leaving it at that, either leaving it at that. And it's tenacious predatoriness, because it's like mining into the mind, to like withdraw, extract that positive energy. It tries the patience, it tries the diplomacy, it tries so many things. And that is the extraction of the positive energy. When the patience are tried, somebody gets frustrated. Now they're vibing less. Now they're getting angry. Those positive vibrations have changed, have been eaten up. And so the person has to cultivate patience again and be like, hold on, let me not trip. But I experienced that today, and particularly today in my travels, the predatoriness and just like the pervasiveness, and it's like a soft and like pimp predatoriness that's like smiley face and has this faint pretense of trust and loyalty, but it's just like getting information on somebody to know how to further manipulate that kinfolk. And that's a tenacious thing. All right, education. I have something to say about education. But let me see if there's anything else to say on this at the moment. Predatoriness. And it's very, because we observe this, it's not just like fear of immediate physical altercation. It's not just a fear of like immediate robbery, physical robbery of material riches or whatever else. It's like delving into people's minds, talking loud on the phone, controlling or influencing people's attention and what they're listening to. It's like commercials. Similar commercials work a similar way. So the mind, and it's involves a lot to protect the sanctity of the mind from negative influences. And that makes the mind further juicy and coveted amongst the predators. And there's all the different types of games just observed today in that respect. And because of that, it makes it difficult to trust others, because the predatoriness looks like a smiling face. Hey, how you doing? Oh, hold on. Yeah, I'm over here. No. We got this going on over here. No. It's okay. Sorry. Yeah, I was just telling you about that other. And people fronting, people faking the funk and everything else. Sometimes it seems like rather obvious. Like that person's not talking to anybody. They didn't dial any numbers. There was no phone call. Oh, it's not right. No. It's okay. So what is observed today is like very few people saying hi back. I do sister. Everybody say hi to people. A lot of people were not saying anything in response, and there is the observations. That's the observance and observation simultaneously. There's the observation. A lot of kinfolk seem to be just like shut off. Like the cats don't want to talk to anybody because they're too much experience. Being exposed to the predatoriness, that whenever seeing anybody, there's that question like, well, who is that? What are they trying to do here? And meanwhile, on the street, the culture is one that is increasingly distrusting towards each other, and new technology is not doing it. New weapons isn't doing it either. It requires putting in the work to experience the healing. So education, let's see if we can wrap up with this while we're already an hour into this. Wow, over an hour. Yeah, over an hour. So, education. One thing to recognize, first of all, education is so extremely important. It's one of the best things that parents can provide a child, children. It's not the best, but it's one of the best. So it's so important in a person's life. Now, that being said, it's also important to recognize that education is basically only the distinction between a fourth caste person and a third caste person. So, as much as an education as a person acquires in this life, formal education, all the credentials and everything else like that, the best essentially that it does in terms of upliftment and rising through the ranks. The best that it does is advance a fourth. Well, this is a very strong statement. The basic limitation that it has is simply elevating a fourth caste person into a third caste person. That's pretty much it. All the education in the world, even all the money in the world, doesn't necessarily buy a person or give a person a ticket into the second caste, which is the princely caste, the landowners, and the shop callers. That's the second caste. And then the first caste is the Brahmins, the religious people, the clerics. So when people talk about education, elite education, private education, parochial education, and otherwise, to recognize that the scope of that conversation is only between the fourth caste level and the third caste level. And that's an actuality check about how to prioritize, how much less to prioritize, how much further to prioritize, and accordingly. One of the best gifts parents can provide to children, I said it before, is learning how to sit quietly and be happy. But one thing that encapsulates that is simply this: discipline. Discipline is greater than education. Education lasts for maybe 3 generations, if that. Discipline has much further staying power. Discipline is what precipitates education. And the best type of discipline is the discipline that parents teach by doing, by living in a certain way, and the children, the students learn from just the way the adults are, the parents are disciplined. the world livity that we teach to kinfolk transcends the third caste and the fourth caste, to be further knowledgeable about the ethics that govern the world so that people can make decisions accordingly in a proficient way. That is getting to the second caste of the world system. And then the first caste is learning further about the spiritual discipline, the earthly discipline. So, and the education that is gained through this world livity, through the world lit program of study, is applicable to any vocation. It's being a teacher, just like with martial arts. We utilized that before. We wrestle with angels and demons. So we're cultivating and recruiting a wrestling team to help in this walk. So with regards to education, it's beneficial to recognize that the conventional education the conventional education simply prepares people to be servants, to make money, to have a job, and to work for somebody else. Servitude, enslavement. And the objective in this context is to be the highest paid slave as possible, with as much vacation time as possible. And that is not a long-term, that is an implausible long-term 7-generation methodology. The increasingly plausible scenario is teaching children discipline, body, mind, and spirit, and heart. So, knowledge of self, that's one of the greatest disciplines. And that's what we share with the World Lit Study Program. That's much of what I have to share at this moment. Excuse me. Still working on the World Lit School Study Program. Did it again. It helps to get some sleep. I've worked 13 hours. All I want is sleep. All I want is sleep. These are the notes. I'm trying to remember what I'm supposed to be sharing at this moment. The study program. Oh yeah, I'm looking up notes for something else. But actually, there's an updated list. Anyways, I'm not gonna show the notes. I'm looking for something. Haha. Okay, we'll wrap it up with this joint. However positive and everything it is, I'm tired. It's time to get some rejuvenation. Alright, here's a statement of facts. You can discern how true they are with you. There is no reason to be mad. There is no madness within reason. There is no madness without reason. Beyond reason there is the madness of love. We give all thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim. Bless, love, and peace of Rastafari.